Want to let you know that we are recording this session with Kelly Bearden from the Small Business Development Center out of Cal State Bakersfield, and super excited to have him with us. He decided to drive over to Ridgecrest today and connect with a few other businesses and clients here in town, and just a great opportunity. Usually when he comes in, I just kind of laugh the whole time because he just likes to make jokes, but super excited to have him. He has a presentation for us, so we'll scroll through that. Just want to give a couple highlights. One is that we're going to have a ribbon cutting of sorts, a non-ribbon cutting celebration experience on Friday. So I want to kind of give everyone that heads up. We're going to be at the Salvation Army at 10 a.m. as they reopen their thrift store. It's been closed for a few weeks as they've done some renovations and reorganization. So this Friday at 10 o'clock, we're going to have a non-ribbon cutting reopening celebration. And Gina's on the call. So Gina, you can pop yourself, unmute yourself and say a few things if you want. I don't hear you. Maybe mine's off. Are you muted, Gina? No.
She looked frozen.
Chris says you're frozen, but you're moving on my camera. Anyway, I can see you wiggling. Why don't you type it in and I'll read it to us in a few minutes. But it'll be good. It'll be good. We're glad to partner with Salvation Army as a member and in our community, all that they do. So that's really the only announcement I wanted to give. Super happy to have Kelly with us. I'm not going to read his bio. You can do that. I've posted it a few times on our different pieces. So I'll let Kelly introduce himself. And do you want to switch chairs so you can sit up higher?
Yeah. Well, it's great to be here. A little musical chairs, but just a little bit. I haven't been in Ridgecrest since May, so when Tim invited me to come be on the Chamber Luncheon, I had to come up here just so I could get out and see some people, see some of our clients, see some other of our stakeholders and those of you out in the community, have some other meetings, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've really done a lot of bragging over the years because I do come out of Bakersfield, but this is going to put me close to like 50 nights that I've spent in Ridgecrest in the last 9 years that I've been here. So I always look for a good excuse to come up here, and I guess this is it this time. So it's great to be here. So a little bit about my bio that Tim didn't read. There's only one good part of it, and that is I grow wine grapes in the Sierra foothills. So the great thing is when you go through a drought and you only have a small vineyard to begin with, and you have wildlife and you have fire issues and you have power issues when you're trying to irrigate and things like that. What ultimately ends up happening is you go up to harvest and a bear has already ripped through your vineyard and eaten all your fruit, and basically did it over 5 days. So that's how I spent my September, was just sitting there going, wow, this is going to be really easy this year. I don't have to harvest anything. The bear did it for me. So that's the highlight of my bio. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in small businesses. And mainly that is going to kind of go through what the Sbdc is really focused on during the pandemic, and that has been on the pandemic relief programs. We started with our first webinar back on March 18th, and it really had a Ridgecrest tie to it because the very first thing we talked about was the SBA disaster loan programs. Now everybody refers to it as EIDL or EIDL or whatever. So with that, you might recall, I'm sure you recall better than a lot of people, that you had a couple of little earthquakes around the 4th of July back in 2019. And that brought SBA to your community. Matter of fact, Tim and I, right here at the chamber, actually had a meeting here with a woman who ultimately ended up being right now the SBA administrator in DC, Isabel Guzman. So we met with Isabel when she was with the California State Office, the California State Small Business Advisor, and she was out here doing some stuff with through the governor's office regarding the earthquake. So what we did was we had done a few of these before. There was a wildfire in the KRV and around Lake Isabella. So we were kind of used to the particular format, even though, as most of you recall, there wasn't a lot of small business damage from the earthquake. You know where it was, but there wasn't a lot. There was some, and most of those people were helped by the SBA disaster folks when they were here. But it really gave us the kind of the footprint and kind of the history and the awareness of the program to right then when the pandemic hit, start offering a webinar on that particular program. And even though I'm going to talk a lot about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, because it is the most pertinent thing in pandemic relief programs still to this very day, 18 months later, maybe not the most popular between our small business owners, but it's really the most pertinent and the most relevant as we move forward here on October the 12th. So just a little bit about us. We're part of the CSUB School of Business and Public Administration, and have a number of sponsors that kind of work with us on a variety of issues. You see who they are there, including the county. The Sbdc program is funded nationally by the U.S. Small Business Administration, which means that here at your chamber, where you've had the administrator, who's the member of the Biden cabinet, that has actually been here in your chamber office, they have funded the Sbdc program since 1980. So we're part of the Central California region in the program. We have our office in Bakersfield. We're actually looking to do a little bit more penetration into the Eastern Sierra because we cover Inyo and Mono, and might even be doing a satellite office up there soon, potentially in Bishop. But it's always been kind of our territory is had it be so we've really flowed out of Bakersfield through Ridgecrest into Bishop and up to Bridgeport and such. So it's really been a really good flow, and it's maybe helps explain why we've been in Ridgecrest a lot over the last 9 years. So just a little bit more about the Sbdc program. What we do is we do two very specific programs. We do what we call high quality business consulting. We do that through 15 consultants that we pay as independent contractors. They're professionals in a variety of different areas, anything from getting small business funding to HR and other areas as far as social media and everything in between. We get a lot of interest in like say a business plan. And when we talk to people about business planning, you know, business planning is important. I'll show you a slide in a few minutes that'll show you perfectly why it's important. But we have resources that can really help small businesses. We have licenses to a platform called LivePlan. And LivePlan is from Palo Alto Software. And what it does is it actually is an interactive business plan tool where you can actually sit at home and work on your business plan and also work with a consultant and use that interaction as a way of working on a particular business plan. At any given time, we have probably 40 to 50 clients throughout those 3 counties that I showed you working on a business plan. And we have about a dozen licenses, which we're going to increase to about 24. So it's been a popular program, and it's really kind of worked well. So we work with clients on a lot of business planning. There's a lot of startup assistance. Obviously, financial and capital were really big, and during the pandemic, they stayed very, very, very popular. Done a lot in government contracting and procurement, working with the base and others out here as well. So one of the other things we do is training. And so I mentioned the webinars. Tomorrow will be our 83rd consecutive Wednesday of being live and talking about managing your business. Originally, it was through the pandemic, and now it's kind of beyond. But we're moving beyond the pandemic. Some of the stuff we'll talk about will be on tomorrow's webinar, particularly related to the pandemic relief programs. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, one one time a month, they make me do the whole webinar, and that's tomorrow. But then we also have special guests the other times. And as you see, our special guest coming up next Wednesday for number 84, we're going to have Megan Hudat, who is the Small Business Finance Manager for the iBank. And the iBank is an acronym for the Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank through the state of California, through GoBiz, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. And then a popular topic that he's actually returning for the second time. We're going to have Michael Stevenson, a CPA with a local Bakersfield firm, and he's going to talk mostly about the ERC, which is the Employee Retention Credit, also known as the Employee Retention Tax Credit. We'll talk a little bit about that, but there have been some changes in both that and the EIDL program that really make a great opportunity for a lot of businesses that they do not know. And this is why we're going to spend some time today talking about the particular EIDL format. And there's our sponsors that you saw earlier. So I told you a little bit about business planning earlier. So this is kind of a slide that we used to show in around 2019, maybe even going back to 2018. And I found this fascinating because we've just gone through maybe one of the biggest crisis small businesses have seen. And this was a source through Bank of America that surveyed a number of their clients. And they asked them that if there was an economic downturn, either yes or no, have you taken the steps to protect my business? And ironically, 69% said yes, they'd taken steps to protect their business. Now, maybe not against the scale of what COVID-19 brought to this economy, but look at the things that they had done. They had established an emergency fund. They'd created alternative business plan for reducing expenses, opened a line of credit, obtained a second job. That was my favorite. And then also they stress test their business. But as we got into the pandemic, I had a hard time believing that 69% of the businesses I talked to had taken steps to protect themselves. So there's always that disaster planning element that's always ready for the next whatever it is. So there you go. 69% of the people, according to Bank of America, were ready for the economic downturn. Okay, so what have we been talking about the last 82, 83 weeks is kind of summarized right here on this sheet right next to you. It's kind of the status and action of the key stimulus programs. Now, we can go back about 6 weeks and there would have been a dozen of the programs. But right now, it is basically the SBA disaster loan, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, the targeted advance and the supplemental advance of the EIDL program. And then it's just basically getting your forgiveness. And the reason we put PPP forgiveness on there is because it's a loan unless you get it forgiven and turn it into a grant. So I always like research that has been being done by an organization, I'll give them a good plug, the National Federation of Independent Business. Not a member, don't get anything if you joined. But they do a survey, and they've done a survey all during the pandemic, and it's accessible on their website. And so what I have liked to have done over the last 83 weeks when we poll our small businesses that are on our webinar is to see how similar it is to that national response. So for example, one of their questions is, did your business receive a PPP loan? And when we've ran this poll a couple of times, we've been right between 75 and 80%. So 80%, the Pareto principle, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend, whatever. I like to call it the 80% rule, but anyway. So yes, about 80% of the businesses that were on our call had received a PPP, and nationwide it's 76%. So why is that important? Because if you go to the EIDL, and I'm going to just jump right to the EIDL loan, I realized that the EIDL loan is not as popular. And it's pretty easy to find out why, because you have to pay it back. Now, free money, I have to pay back. Free money, I have to pay back. I have that same problem with it, okay? But the truth is the EIDL loan program now has changes that every business needs to know about, and we don't know how much longer the money's going to be around. And so when we go to the idle from the National Independent Federation of Business, we see that only 20% of businesses got an idle. So the idle program is what I really want to talk a little bit about today, and we'll jump on this slide right here because this pretty much fills it in. This is a slide that we produced after the September 8th changes. And the big change was that it increased the amount that you could borrow on an idle from $500,000 to $2 million. It also increased the number of borrowers that could actually borrow. Before, an idle loan is a small business loan program. So it's basically 500 employees or less. Doesn't matter if you have a dozen stores and you have combined 501 employee, you are not a small business. Well, that changed, at least for certain types of businesses, certain NACE codes that were damaged particularly hard. And you know what they are. It's hospitality, your dining, your restaurants, your food and beverage, it's your lodging establishments, your other travel types of businesses, and so forth. So they were able to, if they had less than 500 employees per location, they were able to then start bringing in these medium-sized businesses that, as of last Friday, could apply for up to $2 million and an aggregate total of $10 million. So right now, we think that there's a lot of money still left in idle, but we don't know if it's going to last till tomorrow or if it's going to last until the program supposedly sunsets on December 31st. It's kind of like that conundrum that many of you that got a PPP loan faced. You didn't know at first if the money was going to be there for you by the time your PPP loan was done. And then Congress came and they put more money in the program, so it was all good. So that's kind of where we are on idle now. But the important thing is the SBA has made a determination that whereas the idle program, the economic injury disaster loan program, initially was an emergency loan program, it has changed now to a actual recovery program. So why is that important? Well, it's important for a lot of reasons. Number one is you are now actually able to use the idle funds for more reasons. And if you're one of those 20% out there that got the idle loan, you don't have to use it now for just working capital and notes payable. The big thing is, the big game changer, and that we've worked with clients and that we've talked about on our webinar insanely for the last 6-7 weeks, is that you can take that idle loan now and you can refinance existing debt that you have. So if you went out and you say got a fintech lender, an online lender, and they charged you 36% for your $50,000 loan, the idle will take that out. You can actually use those proceeds now. They don't refinance because they don't want the debt, but you can use the proceeds from that idle loan and pay it off. And you can do that with every form of debt other than federal debt. So you can't go take out an existing SBA loan, except for the fact that you can make your payments current. You can make your current payment. You just can't make advance payments. That's a game changer to a lot of people. It's really a game changer. So not only did it go up to $2 million, but the uses changed substantially to where you can use it to buy machinery and equipment, which really were not allowed. And these changes that I just told you about are retroactive, going back to when you received your idle. So if you were one of the first ones that got an idle, say around, we saw them as early as late March of last year, that now is subject to these rules now. So that has been really my life for the last 5 weeks of trying to tell everybody that I know about these rule changes and see if they can actually benefit moving forward. So with the idle program, we're no longer in an emergency basis mode. We are now in recovery, and recovery is defined as being able to help our businesses more. So If you already had an idle loan, what are some of the things that you can do? Or well, let's just look at the changes, the rest of the changes first. So now it's considered, originally a lot of the loans were a 6-month loan. Now every loan is 24 months, basically. We've gone through payment deferrals to where we're now into 2022, where you do not have to make a payment on that. However, that interest still accrues. So you are still paying 3.75% interest on that. And remember, this is a loan program that's going for 30 years at 3.75%. So originally we went from 150 up to 500. Now it's from 500 to 2 million. There's a couple of things out there that kind of affect also the long-term aspect of the program, and that's the infrastructure bill that has been kind of bouncing around Congress for seemingly forever. But it was passed by the Senate, I would guess, maybe 6-8 weeks ago. And in that Senate version was to help pay for the infrastructure bill. This is the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. And those of you that have seen any of our webinars or talked to me, I don't get into the politics of the situation, only how it affects your small business. So the infrastructure bill takes about $30 billion from the idle, and it also takes it from the idle advance. So that's one reason why it's a little bit different there. We talked about a lot of the increased uses, including credit cards, government-backed debt that's not federal debt, like from state or maybe a county or local source, can actually be repaid. And see, the nice thing is you can request additional funds. And there's a couple of ways to do that. If you have an existing loan, you can go right into your SBA portal and click existing funds and actually slide the bar saying how much you would like to borrow. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can send the SBA an email and actually ask them to increase the funds. A lot of people, I would like to say this has all been a really smooth road for a lot of people that applied for some of these idle products. The COVID-19 idles, what I'm mostly talking about. But then there was the idle advance that happened this year. There was the supplemental advance. Many of you might have got the idle from last year, the idle grant from last year. It was up to $10,000 based on how many employees you had. If you had 10 employees or more, you received $10,000 in many cases. And then it's scaled down based on your number of employees. So those were all the idles, but it didn't come without a lot of heartache and grief. A lot of people had conflicting information. And let's face it, when Congress authorized this and when this was first carried out last year, we saw a lot of fraud in this program. We saw a lot of fraud in PPP. Those were all tightened up now. Everything is scrutinized and everything is matched and checked. So oftentimes you might have a business address, you might have a home address, you might have a second business location. If those didn't jive with your tax returns and some of your other filings, you were denied, plain and simple. You were kicked out. There was a lot of reasons. I can't get into the number of reasons because there were literally dozens and dozens that we saw for people that went through a reconsideration request. And that was a viable option to actually say, you turned me down, but I want you to look at it again. One of the problems people would do is they would get turned down, and so they would actually complete another application. Let me try it again. And that would just open up another can of worms by having multiple employer identification numbers on these idle applications. So if you were ever turned down and you know somebody that was turned down, there's a reconsideration process. Right now we're at the latest information we have, and I'm really looking forward to tomorrow because they update this on a Wednesday. And right now we're looking at, as of 9/30/21, we're looking at about 270 billion. Now, originally I thought there was about 365 billion that was out there, but I heard a conflicting number around 500 billion. So we'll see how much and how long this lasts. But the other thing that is out there that I want to talk to you about is the employee retention tax credit. Now, going back to our survey, our national survey was how familiar you are with the employee retention tax credit. And either very familiar or somewhat is about half of the individuals. And that has increased steadily over the last 6 months. The employee retention tax credit is available to those. There are certain rules and regulations. We won't get into them right now. If you're interested in finding out more about that, attend our webinar later this month, 2 weeks from tomorrow, where we have somebody who really knows what they're talking about. So, but the good thing about the employee retention tax credit, it's unlike other tax credits where you can actually receive a check. You can receive an advance or what that amount is in advance. And some of the amounts that our clients have received is, for me, was quite shocking, to be honest with you. It was quite lucrative. So if you can apply and actually you meet the certain eligibility requirements, there's some really good money out there in this employee retention credit. So keep that in mind too. So how long does the employee retention credit last? Well, today it lasts till the end of the year. But in that infrastructure bill was a provision to end it on September 30th. So if somehow they go back to that and end it on September 30th, what I'm talking about isn't available anymore. But trust me, in 83 weeks of constant changes, like every week, every other week, we're kind of used to that. Right now, you can apply for a fourth quarter employee retention tax credit if you qualify, and a third quarter if you have employees and you've met the eligibility requirements. The other thing that's unique about this one is a recovery startup business can apply. With most of the pandemic relief programs, your Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, your Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, your EIDL, you had to be in business by, usually the date was February 15th of 2020. This is the first program that changes that. And they are actually allowing recovery businesses because they realized that businesses were in the process of opening and had spent a considerable amount of money and had not opened by that date. So if they were able to open and hire employees and then able to retain them and keep them, which as small business owners, I know isn't easy these days, then they're able to receive this particular credit. So really kind of a unique situation to where this is a particular credit or pandemic relief program that can actually work for a business that opened up later. So I'm going to just end it with this, is because I usually like ending stuff with this because I'm old school. I think Tim kind of referred to that when I walked in the door today. But see, I give somebody good service and they tell a friend. And if they give somebody bad service, they might tell 5 friends. But nowadays, if you give somebody bad service, potentially they tell thousands of friends. So that's what I have for you. That's the condensed version of where we are with the EIDL program, which is still going as of today and still has possibility for recovery to assist a lot of businesses, and a little bit on the ERC as well. And if you have any questions, is now the time, Tim?
Sure. Let me pop up the
or you can email me later. That's fine.
So if you have questions for Kelly, you want to either type them into the chat, we can read them, or if you want to turn on your mic, you can ask them directly. Invite you to do both. Earlier, I had referenced that Salvation Army is hosting an event, and Gina posted about it when her mic wasn't working. So if you want to click on the information there, you can catch what Gina was sharing about Salvation Army and their event on Friday that we're all invited to participate in. But want to invite you to ask some questions to Kelly. Don't be shy.
And one of the questions can be, why is Tim still taller than me, even though he's sitting in a smaller chair now?
I lowered the seat on accident too.
That makes me feel better.
It happened.
Don't feel bad. I think Tim's taller than all of us.
Yes. Yeah, Donna.
Hi, good afternoon. I was just wondering if you could what was the percentage of EIDL loans that you had mentioned? Or the number?
Essentially, on a nationwide basis, and I think when we ran our survey, it was pretty close. It was 20% of small businesses surveyed received a EIDL loan. And that compares to with about 80% that received the PPP.
Do you happen to have numbers specific to Kern County?
I do not have specific numbers to Kern County. If I went back and looked in our poll for our webinar, I could give you the amount that our respondents from Kern and Yamato and elsewhere, where people joined from. But I do not have any of that. All this information is public information too. You can go to the SBA website and you could almost sort it by Kern.
Okay.
I'd like to think that we're a little higher than that in Kern County, but it would just be a guess.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. Thank you.
Kelly, I had a question. When you were talking about the business planning that your office helps provide, and that electronic connection with someone who's helping you,
right?
Is there a fee for that? How's that structured?
No, we actually if you leave, here's how it works, is we work with Live Plan, and what they do is we buy a number of licenses. So as long as we're working with the client, it's free of charge. If you go directly through Live Plan, I believe it's like about $15 a month, which, it equates out to $180. And if you do your business planning, I still think that's a great value. But when you're working with the Sbdc, it is free of charge. And like I say, we're in the process of adding more licenses, just because it's just really popular. One of the real nice features also, in addition to our senior level consultants, is that we have interns. It's kind of, our program's taken a beating during COVID, but we have student interns from CSUB, from the School of Business. And what they do is they are very active and engaging also in this particular process. So we actually you could either work with your senior level consultant, you can work with an intern. Another thing that they'll pull is, in addition to doing the Live Plan, we have, since the Sbdc program is in all 50 states and 6 foreign territories, we have a clearinghouse in Texas that does national research for us. But it's specific based on your NAICS code. So if your NAICS code is, say, 72, which is going to be hospitality, food and beverage, and you could actually go out 4 or 5 digits on that, and we could pull a market analysis based on your location. So we could tell you, and it varies by, exactly what NAICS code you're in, the specific nature of that information, but it's a lot of pretty good information. And it'll give you kind of some good market research going into a particular project, or if you're looking to expand your business, either in the number of units or just the size of that particular business.
Thanks.
Hey, you're welcome.
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Hi, Tim. First of all, thanks for hosting today. Kelly, it's nice to meet you. My name's Jake. My question is, I think it's fascinating that you surveyed people if they're ready for a downturn right before all the lockdowns and everything. I think it's so interesting. But my question is, if you took that quiz now, or you did that survey now, would you say people are more prepared going forward, that we've gone through so much disruption? Or it's kind of a high-level question, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's an outstanding question, and it's actually an annual survey that Bank of America does with their small business clients, and they distribute it. That's a good. I haven't really gone back and tried to see if they did something during the pandemic. I think people start talking to me about statistics from 2019, and I'm just, even though I used that today, I always go with it doesn't matter anymore. 2019, it's ancient history compared to where we are today. It's not relevant. So I would be wondering, Jake, I'm going to check into that. And I'll get, if I can get some information to Tim.
Sure.
I think it's going to be, probably it's going to need to take like a 21 survey that hasn't been done yet,
Right.
to really be able to compare those two really well. Because last year, I think everybody was mired too much in the pandemic. But I do think it's going to, if I were to guess, I would think people are going to think more about disaster planning in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you kind of had a heads up because of the earthquake. So you started thinking about it, a good, almost 9 months before everybody else. So, but that's a good question. I'll check into that.
You bet. Thank you.
So I have a question. Where's the lunch?
I have nuts over here.
That's not going to float the boat. Ugh. No, okay, thanks.
Well, if there are no more questions, I'll let us break early. But I appreciate, Kelly, that you took time to drive over to Ridgecrest to connect with us, to share with some really good information. As I mentioned earlier, we recorded this, so we'll have that available online for you to view later and come back to. If you think of a question, don't hesitate to reach out to me at the chamber that I can forward to Kelly, or reach out to Kelly directly.
Email me.
That's super easy. We can give you that contact information, and just want to say thank you. So again, if you are in Ridgecrest this Friday, I invite you to come out to a ribbon cutting, a non-ribbon cutting celebration at the Salvation Army as they reopen their thrift store this Friday at 10 a.m. So it'll be a good time just to celebrate what Salvation Army is doing in our community and what they're able to provide for all of our community. So with that, I want to say again, thank you, Kelly. And if you have any words you want to give us on our way out.
Well, if you're interested in that idol or know somebody who is, act fast, because there's no telling how long these funds are going to last. 3.75% for 30 years.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And that's the for-profit. And nonprofits have a different rate, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, if you're a Chamber of Commerce, you can get the rate's only 2.75%.
Yeah, I think we got 2.75. But okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great Tuesday and be well.
So long. Good seeing y'all.